Ladies and gentlemen, come gather around, come gather around, come gather around. Today, we're going to be looking at automatic transmissions. Woohoo! This is fourth year apprentice stuff. So I'm not really going to go way down the rabbit hole and teach every intimate detail of automatic transmissions. I'm going to give you a nutshell of kind of how it works, kind of like your biology teacher tells you how the heart works and how heart surgery might be done, but we don't hand you a spoon and let you try it. You may remember in Mechanics Level 1, we looked at how the engine works and how the engine support systems all work, and we made power. And then in Level 2, we talked about clutches, manual transmissions, and drivetrains, and now in Level 3, we got to go back and look at automatics. Automatics have their place in this world. They're not always my favorite, and yet at the same time, they have a favorite spot in my heart. But how the automatic transmission gets from here to here, we're going to look at that. There's a couple things it has to do. One, we need it to stay stopped and still run. Two, we're going to want to be able to select different gears so we can have different speeds and help our vehicle out whether we need power or not. We also want to look at making it shift automatically. Duh. Which would include looking at road speed, engine load, specifically light engine load and heavy engine load. If you're driving that super nice because your mom is beside you and you don't want to get in trouble, the shifts need to be early and soft. Whereas under full throttle, we want those shifts to be late and firm. Let's look at how an automatic transmission can stay stopped and still let the engine run. Ladies and gentlemen, today, inside Mr. Wellwood's workshop, we have for you today the ultimate battle between two fans. It's a fan club. It's the battle of torque plus transmission. Torque for your transmission. Why, we might even convert torque to put into the transmission. In this corner, weighing 8 pounds, wearing the gray trunks with the white trim, powered by 120 volts of electricity, we have Lasko. And in this corner, also weighing 8 pounds, wearing the white trim with the gray trunks, powered by nothing but the smile his mother gave him, also Lasko. We're here in a monumental battle. Two fans, one with power, one with nothing. What's gonna happen? Let's find out. And a powerful opening move by Lasko on the left side. He's moved his fan to the slow speed. Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen over here? Let's take a look. It looks like nothing. Lasko on the right is doing nothing. He's not doing anything at all. This is crazy. This is monumental. This will be the end of this fan. Oh my gosh. He's moving up to the next speed. This is level 2 proficiency. He's increased the fan blow. The people are going crazy. What's this? Oh no. Lasko on the right is starting to move. He's responding. He's being blown down. He's being affected by the wind coming out of the first guy. What's going to happen next? It looks like, no, don't do it. He is. It's level 3 fan. I can feel it going through my underpants. This is going to be horrific. And look, this Lasko is completely overwhelmed. Ladies and gentlemen, oh my gosh, we have a loser. Wait. Loser. With a manual transmission, you're going to connect the engine to the transmission manually. It's pretty much always going to be done with a clutch. We've got a flywheel on one side, a pressure plate on the other, and it grabs the clutch disc. Automatics have a device that looks like this. It's called a torque converter. This side bolts to your flywheel. This part goes into the transmission. But wait, there's more. Inside a torque converter we have 3 pieces, although modern ones would have like a 4th piece, but we'll get there. This is the piece that's attached to what would be the flywheel. In an automatic we call it a flex plate. It's just really thin. This is going to spin with the motor. This piece is welded to this. So when the motor is turning, this is turning or spinning as well because they're fixed. They're welded to it. But when the engine is spinning, this is spinning. This part sits inside here. This thing just kind of floats in there. Notice it's got splines. These go to the input of the transmission. Once the engine speed is such that this starts to turn, the input shaft will turn with it. You'll notice nothing really touches inside here yet. We're going to fill this completely full of oil, transmission oil. And it'll be full. And when the whole thing is spinning, the oil in here kind of gets flung out the outside edge, flung off that side. It's going to hit this, and if this thing spins fast enough, the oil's going to be flung off and hit this fast enough, and it'll start this to spin with it. If we go to a fast enough speed, the oil's going to be spun off hard enough that these pretty much spin close to each other in speed. There's always going to be a little bit of loss. On my truck, I lose about 200 RPM of speed between what the engine's doing and what the rest of the truck is doing. In the original automatic transmissions, this was it, and the two worked, and they worked slowly. They took their sweet time to accelerate. So at some point, somebody decided, let's put one of these in here. This one gets splined onto the front pump housing of the automatic transmission, and then when the oil is flung off of here, into here, gets this moving, and the oil comes on the inside, the oil hits this, which redirects that flinging oil to go back into here and kind of use the moving oil to help give you a little bit more power. It multiplies torque. It kind of converts that moving oil into more torque. Whoa, we should call this a torque converter. So we have the spline for the input shaft, we got the spline for the stator, and we have two flats on here which nestle into the pump of an automatic transmission so that when the engine is rotating, this is turning the pump on the automatic transmission. We've got hydraulic power going to everything in an automatic transmission. That's kind of why you can't bomb start an automatic. Without the power coming from the rotating motor, you can't engage anything in the transmission, so you can't bomb start the engine. Yep.
Mr. Wellwood, I'm pretty sure that the old GM Power Glide from the 1960s could be bomb started.
Yes, but that's not normal. It had a pump at the back, so you could, but most everything else you cannot. This would be the front pump of the automatic transmission. And in the inside of it, you see this sort of thing. If you've had an engine apart, you may have seen an oil pump that looks like this. When this thing rotates with the engine, you'll see the spaces in here are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The oil gets sucked into here, brought in through these spaces, moved along because they can't go anywhere through here until they get squished back together and they get pressurized and pumped into here. And that goes to feed everything in the transmission. Let's look at how we get gears out of an automatic transmission. It's not at all like a manual transmission. When we're putting a torque converter on a transmission, because we're putting it back in the car, we're going to take the torque converter and we're going to put it on the input shaft, and we want to feel three clunks. We got the input splines, that's clunk 1. Clunk 2 will be the stator splines, and clunk 3 will be this. Put it on and wiggle, clunk, 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 and then you know the torque converter's on. If you don't get it on 3 clunks, you probably jam that into the pump, destroy the pump, take out the transmission, and you'll wonder why it doesn't go anywhere. The black magic and voodoo of an automatic transmission is this device here. Let's zoom in. So this is called a planetary gear set. And it's called a planetary gear set because we have a sun gear, and for all you flat earthers, yes, the planets are round and they do revolve around the sun. And then outside of here, because our universe might be finite, this is the ring gear. And the planets move around the sun within the ring gear. In this magical, mystical device right here, we can have 4 different gears. Holy carp. Underdrive, which is a reduction of speed but an increase of torque. Direct drive, which would be a 1-to-1 gear ratio. Overdrive, which would be a reduction in torque but an increase of speed. And you can have reverse. And I know you don't believe me. Well, check this out. If I hold the ring gear and I turn the sun, can you see that the planets are going slower than the rotation of the sun gear? Oh my gosh. So if I could somehow send the motor to this and send that to the drive shaft, I get underdrive. If I hold the ring gear and the planets together at the same time, I cannot move the sun gear. This thing is locked, and so they will move at the same speed. If I can send the engine to here and still this to the drive shaft, then they will be the same speed. They're locked together and cannot move. So we have direct drive. What if I hold the ring gear and send power to the planets? Can you see how the sun gear is going faster than the planets are? Oh my gosh, it's like I'm overdriving the sun gear. Looks like I got overdrive. Yeah? I bet you when you eat more candy bar, Mr. Welded, you can't get reverse out of that. Accept it. If I hold the planets, and I can hold them from the back, if I hold the planets and I turn the sun, oh my gosh, can you see the ring gear going in reverse? So now if I run the engine to this, hold that, this is going to go in reverse. Ooh, oh, it sucks to be me. Yes, but I get to eat more candy bar. My favorite. Oh, one of my favorite viewers, Philip Mallory, writes, if you take those planetary gears, you can have a lot more fun if you can kind of join them together. You may have heard of the term of gear multiplication. It's kind of where you can take the gear ratio of one, multiply it to the gear ratio of the next, and have an extra gear, whether you're gearing up or gearing down. Let's say we take this planetary gear set, put it in low gear. Let's take the engine and run it to the input of this. We'll take the output here in low gear, send it to the input of this one. Set this one up to be in low gear, and then it's going to be low times low, and then you're going to have like low gear. And you could probably pull a house off the foundation. Or maybe you've got this thing in high gear, and you feed it into this one and put it in high gear, and then you're going to have like a high gear for good cruising on the highway. Or maybe you could have the low feed the high, or you could have the high feed the low, and you could have mix and matches of gear ratios to get different gear ratios so you can have more gears. In fact, why stop at 2? We could add another one. We could even have another one. We could now, I don't know, we could do the math here, because you've got like, I can't even begin to think of the math of what we could have here. We could have this low feeding a 1-to-1, feeding a high, feeding a 1-to-1. We could have this high feeding a high, feeding a low, feeding a high. If these were different planet sizes and different sun sizes and different ring sizes, you could have a whole bunch of different gears. And then, you know, like, oh man, then you'd be telling stories like, I was driving down the highway in low, high, low, low, high. Then I shifted her down into high, high, low, low. And then I was going 1-to-1 to 1 to 1 to low to high. And it went crazy. So I'm just crunching some numbers here, trying to figure out how many gears I'd actually have. And if I've got like high going to low, 1-to-1 and high, that's 3. And then I got 1 going to low, 1 and high, that's another 3, that's 6. Then I got low going to low, 1 and high, that's 9. So these two planetary gear sets could give me 9 gears, and those ones would give me 9 gears. So together that would be 81 gears, and we haven't even thought about reverse yet. Although, technically, if you think about it, if you have your car going in forward and reverse, well, I guess it depends which way you have it. Your car could rip itself apart, or maybe it would just, you might want to get your money back. Now, the next question you have should be, how do you hold all of that? And that gets a little crazy. We want to be able to grab parts of the planetary gear set, but we don't want to grab them like instant. That would be shock and probably trip the tires and shove you in the back of the seat. Ooh, I'm liking that already. Yeah, but John Q. Public doesn't like that. But we want to be able to grab different parts of these kind of smoothly and comfortably, and for that we need some kind of way of gripping it. Can you think of some way that we grip things in the drivetrain? Yep.
Didn't we use a clutch to grip things in a manual transmission? Could we use something like that?
Nicely done. And we do. It's going to look like this. No. Yeah! So this is a clutch pack, and it's going to come with steels and friction discs. This one appears to be from a different transmission. Oh, I remember this one. So we have a bunch of steels, and we have a bunch of friction discs. Now you're looking at this going, that's a whole lot smaller than one of these. Yeah, but if you're looking at surface area, you can have a stack of these, and they would have the same amount of surface area as one of these. This one's from a very small 1.4 liter Mazda. This one's from a 2.4 liter Nissan. Difference in power of significance. But if I put down a steel, add a friction, add another steel. Now, if I clamp these together, I can have this thing be engaged. So you'll notice there's inside teeth and outside teeth. The outside teeth will attach to the case or some drum or some component inside the automatic, so it can be locked to one part, and the inside teeth will be splined onto some rotating component as well. So close. These clutches would fit the ring gear, except not this one, because I don't have the parts. I don't remember where they went. If this is splined onto this, then I can lock this to something, either a rotating drum or the case of the transmission, but I can lock it and secure it and stop it from moving, or I can drive it to another piece that's already moving. There's usually a hydraulic piston that applies these, and I have on some transmissions machined the piston shorter and added another clutch and steel, and that gives me a lot more grip and power on the clutch. This one came out of the transmission on my 77 Silverado. And what had happened is I was driving off to work one day, I pull out onto the highway, I romp on the gas like I always do, it's accelerating, chirps into second gear because I've got modifications to that transmission, carries on, and when it should be shifting into third, it didn't. And it's still revving higher and higher and higher. And I'm thinking, that's weird. So I back off the gas pedal and the thing engages into whatever RPM I should be. I romp on the gas pedal again and it starts flaring into the red line. And I thought, oh crap. So I drove very gently to work. When work was over, I drove very gently home. And I got in another car and I went to a transmission shop and said, give me a rebuild kit for this transmission. When I got it all apart, this was an example of one of the clutches applying third gear in that transmission, and it's definitely smoked. This transmission was good when I took it apart, and you can see kind of a waffle pattern of grid. It's still got friction on there. This one is, it's gone. So if you have a transmission that should have shifted into a gear and it didn't shift into a gear, you want to drive it nicely to a transmission shop and get it fixed. If you just give it more throttle to try and make it go, you're going to smoke everything in the transmission. Sometimes it's hard to make the inside of a transmission be chock full of clutches. Clutches for first gear, clutches for second gear, clutches for third gear, and so on. That can be a bit of a challenge. So some manufacturers will use a way of grabbing the outside of this with a band. Looks like this. And the band would just go around this, and a hydraulic piston would push really tight, and it would tighten up and grab whatever it is you want to grab. These are usually anchored to the case of the transmission and often are used for like manual first gear to give you a lot of strength so the transmission doesn't blow up, for second gear just because it's easy to apply it, and bands are usually pretty good. In many transmissions, especially for drive first gear, we don't really need to hold something with a clutch. We could just stop a piece of the transmission from spinning in reverse. If we can lock it so it doesn't spin in reverse, but allow it to spin in the other direction when we pick a different gear, we can make the transmission simpler. And this is one way of doing it. This is called a Sprag clutch, and it allows things to move in one direction but not the other. If you look at the pieces inside here, they're kind of like a dog bone shape. And they're not exactly normal shape. They're kind of weird. It's like you're playing Operation and trying to pull out the kidney out of the guy. If I set it like this, the distance between is shorter. If I wedge this thing over, this thing gets a longer distance and it jams. It wedges itself together and stops it from rotating. So it allows an object to turn in one direction and not turn in the other direction. Just trust me. They sometimes call this a Sprag clutch or an overrunning clutch. Let's look at how we can shift gears. If we're using hydraulic oil, maybe we could have hydraulic oil come into here, go around this smaller middle section and flow out to there. And maybe this goes to like first gear, and maybe that goes to like second gear. And what I want this to do is have hydraulic fluid go here to power up everything, apply all the clutches and bands that we need to have first. And then when I go fast enough, this moves over and I can have hydraulic fluid go into second gear and apply everything I need there. In a very simple system, I could hook this up to my shifter. I'm going to need some kind of constant hydraulic pressure over here that's big enough to apply everything that we need to apply on this side. Let's connect this side to our shifter so we can manually control what gear we're in. Right now in this arrangement, let's say that the constant hydraulic pressure can sneak past here and apply first gear. If this is connected to our shifter, as we drive along, when I'm ready to shift gears, I can just push that until I get to second gear. Now all the hydraulic pressure can come out here. But that's not a very automatic kind of shift. Let's look at how we can shift gears using road speed. How about we change this from going to the shifter and hook up a pressure that's directly related to road speed. So the faster we go, the higher the pressure goes. Now, if we have the pressure increase and increase and increase, this thing could just slam against that, and we don't really want that. So let's put a spring in here to resist the road speed. Now, as I drive down the road and the road speed gets faster and faster and faster, this valve is going to move and shift into second gear. One end is going to stick into a transmission and it's got gears on it, and those gears connect directly to the output shaft of the transmission. If I'm looking at it from the back, it's going this way. So when the transmission is spinning, this thing is going as well. This shaft carries on for a ways like this. At the end are like two little pins, and on those pins are weights that kind of look like this. And the faster this spins, the more these weights want to fling out. The important part to note here is there's kind of a thing inside here which can move forward or back, kind of like this. So we start off in first gear, and these are kind of tucked in, and as we spin faster and faster and faster, these start to move out. These weights are flung out with centrifugal force, which may or may not exist. Notice my thumbs here, they're showing this part. As these spin out, as these weights come out, these push in, and they start to change some valving to make it shift into the next gear. At some point, this will move far enough that this moves enough that we now have an upshift. So we might start off in first, they go here, they go further and further out till we get to some point. Then we have enough road speed and line pressure to get into second gear, and we keep on going. The vehicle goes faster and faster and faster. These weights go further and further until this pushes in enough to go to third gear. You start slowing down, these things start coming in, and we can downshift into second, and then we eventually get into first. More specifics about those are all in the valve body, but this is going to be your governor, which takes road speed and changes it to line pressure so you can shift. Just don't get the governor angry. But this isn't going to change the way it shifts. It will always shift at the same time all the time. And we might want to be able to drive gently and nice with early shifts so we don't spill our super big lemon squishy that we got at the Quickie Mart. And maybe we want it to shift late and hard when we're trying to pass that bus full of nuns. So this isn't going to be good enough. What I need is some way of making it shift early when the engine is not loaded and late when the engine is loaded. I don't have a transmission governor to show you, but I can kind of show you what they sort of look like. Let's look at how we can shift gears with engine load. Imagine, if you will, a connection that goes to engine vacuum. We got to change our design a little bit so that this is going to make a bit more sense. Let's take this end and connect it to engine vacuum. So when you're cruising and you've got high vacuum in the intake manifold, that vacuum wants to suck this piston up. It wants to move this. It wants to help this along. It wants to counter that spring. Kind of like when you're sucking on the triple thick shake at Mickey D's. You're sucking that milkshake sauce up the straw. Now, when I'm cruising down the road and the road speed increases and the hydraulic pressure is trying to push this along, engine vacuum is going to help it, and it'll shift sooner, kind of like this. And then, conversely, if there is no engine vacuum, this isn't being helped along. The only way this thing moves now is strictly road speed. So if we set up that spring stiff enough to resist the road speed to give us our latest shifts, then this thing will wait a long time. It'll take its sweet time to get there, and then finally you get into second gear. Or when we're cruising, high vacuum, and we get a little bit of road speed, this thing sucks it along and it shifts into second gear early, gently. That's going to be nice. Now we kind of have an automatic transmission that can shift nice when you want it and not nice when you don't want it. Or you do want it, or not. You get the idea. For shifting based on engine load, you'd usually need a vacuum modulator. This plugs into the transmission, this is hooked up to your engine, and when there's engine vacuum, vacuum is applied to a rubber seal, which pulls and helps to pull that spool valve to help you shift in the next gear. No vacuum, it takes longer for it to shift, so the shifts are later. Some of these are adjustable, and you can put in a little tiny screwdriver in here and turn to make it shift later or earlier, depending on whatever you want. All that crazy goings on is inside a body full of valves, called a valve body. And it looks like this. This is part of one from some transmission somewhere. I think I took this out of a front-wheel drive transmission. And there's a whole bunch of little valves inside here. They kind of all fit in these little holes. They can be removed. Inside are usually springs and other valves, and you can kind of see them there. This one's hooked up to the shifter, and I've got like park, reverse, neutral, drive, 2, 1. This spool valve is sending hydraulic fluid through this black magic and voodoo maze of wonderment to apply the different clutches and bands to make it do what you want. All the rest of these help time when you upshift, when you downshift, and control how it all is going to happen inside the transmission. This is crazy. I'm not going to go deep on this because that's I'm just giving you the idea of how it sort of works. Now, you guys know I can't leave anything alone. So you know if I'm going into an automatic transmission, I need one of these. Lots of companies make lots of different shift reprogrammers or modifiers, and these can make changes to your transmission. Inside, instructions, usually a set of springs to change how and when things happen, and you often have a new separator plate. This just goes between the transmission and the valve body. And interestingly, all these holes have a purpose. Some of these holes apply the shifts that you want. You can change how quickly it'll shift into gear by finding the appropriate hole and drilling the hole bigger, which is always fun. You go too big, this thing will crack the tires loose everywhere. As with most things in life, if you can read and follow instructions, you're going to do okay. The kit comes with instructions. Tells you what to do, what to change, what to make it happen for you. It even gives you tips on what size holes you should drill depending on what you want. Here's a picture of the governor. And while this style of automatic transmission is kind of 1950s technology, if we want to get to something modern, like when we got into the 1990s, a lot of our shift activation was done by these. This is an electronic shift solenoid. A computer decides when it needs to shift, and it'll apply electricity to here. Electricity will engage this and allow hydraulic fluid to apply whatever shift you need. So while the old school is drilled holes and springs and things, this is kind of the way we go now. And we learned how this thing could be stopped and still have the engine running. And we learned how you can be driving through all the gears. And we learned about the automatic shifting into all the gears for you automatically. And there we go. Lessons to live by.